So last time we learned what is a data warehouse और उसके एप्लीकेशंस क्या होते हैं, और अगर आपने वो वीडियो नहीं देखा है तो लिंक यहाँ पर है। बट ये सीखने के बाद अक्सर एक क्वेश्चन दिमाग में जरूर आता है जो मैं आपको एक सेकंड के बाद बताऊंगा, क्योंकि अगर आज आप कुछ नया सीख रहे हैं तो लाइक और शेयर करना तो बनता है। करिए, आई एम वेटिंग। तो सवाल ये था कि व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन डेटा वेयरहाउस एंड डेटाबेस। आखिर दोनों ही डेटा स्टोर करते हैं। आंसर हमारे एक्सपर्ट IIIT बैंगलोर के प्रोफेसर चंद्रशेखर के पास है।
I know there is always this vexing question about what is the difference between a data warehouse and the database. To begin with, I'll tell you that that's a wrong question to ask. The reason is, database is nothing but a collection of data, right? So is a data warehouse. Data warehouse is also a collection of data. So a more appropriate question to ask would be, what is the difference between a data warehouse and a transactional database? So let me define this term called transactional database for you by taking the example of e-commerce, okay, the Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world. So the normal purchases that you do on the website, right? So you log in, you search for your product, you add it to the cart, and then you connect to the payment system, and then you make your payments, enter the OTP, right? The whole thing requires some kind of a database, isn't it? So that database is called the transactional database, right? So that is the most familiar database that we are all used to. So probably that's what you mean when you say what is the difference between a data warehouse and database. So I'm assuming when you say database, you mean this kind of a transactional database, right? Which means any database that helps me carry out the day-to-day automation of activities. If it is a banking system, I can be using my card in the ATM machine. So that is a transaction that requires a transactional database, which means transactional databases are those databases which help users carry out their day-to-day business transactions, whatever that might be, whatever that domain might be. So let us now try to contrast it with a data warehouse. So the data warehouse is intended for a completely different purpose. Okay, the transactional database, it is intended for carrying out business transaction, whereas a data warehouse is also a database, but it is intended for carrying out analysis, analytics, decision making. So we can distinguish both of them from multiple dimensions. So let us try to distinguish it from the user's perspective. Who are the different types of users who use a transactional database versus a data warehouse database? A transactional database is used by end users like you and me who want to carry out some business transaction online. On the other hand, a data warehouse database is used by decision makers, by managers, right? So typically, the CEO, CXO, or even it is more for decision making. In fact, those kind of decision systems where you used to be called as DSS, decision support systems, as opposed to MIS, or management information systems, or just information systems. The first distinction is in terms of the users who are using it. Okay. If you want to go a bit deeper, we can also now begin to distinguish on the technical side. So let me tell about the similarities. So in both the cases, you have some kind of a server ecosystem that's there to support the system. So if it's a decision support system or an analytics system in a data warehouse, or if it is a transactional database, in both cases there are databases. So the similarity is there, right? In both cases, there are some database management system software that's running for managing the data. In terms of technology, right, there are additional moving parts when it comes to the data warehouse. If you recall the discussion we had on the database architecture largely, right, one very significant component of a data warehouse architecture is the ETL process, extract, transform, and load process. Because as part of the definition of the data warehouse itself, one of the key terms is that it is integrated. What we mean by integrated is we expect the data warehouse to contain data from multiple sources, from multiple departments, from multiple other databases. So in order to make that happen, ETL is a very significant element of a data warehouse which finds no place in a transactional database. In the transactional database, you have the DBMS, you have other server-side application, APIs and application servers, JBoss server and so on. The technology stack is quite different when it comes to transactional database compared to a data warehouse database, right? So the key difference, even at the server level, is that of there is ETL present in the data warehouse infrastructure. You don't have any ETL that's happening for a transactional database, right? So that's the second difference for you. Let's move the stack a little bit, right? So we did talk about the end users, the kind of technologies that are used in the front end. Let me call it as the front end. Let's call the database itself as the back end. On the front end, if you look at the transactional database, right, the kind of technologies that are used are, web servers and browsers for interaction, mobile phones and interfaces with payment gateways, payment systems, right? So a lot of transactional front ends are there for my transactional database. For the data warehouse database, the front end is essentially only what we know as the BI tools, business intelligence tools, which means it contains lots of reporting tools. So you will have tools like Cognos that's running there. You will have tools like Tableau. You will have many reporting front-end infrastructure, because the intention of the data warehouse database is not to support business transactions. The intention is to support analysis. So we have BI tools like the reporting tools which add value to the information that is stored in the data warehouse databases. So I can do lots of analysis, I can do drill down, I can do roll up. Those kind of operations can be done on a data warehouse database using the business intelligence front end. Whereas in the transactional database, we generally don't have any such front ends, right? A lot of interactive reporting is generally not available on a transactional database. At the most, you may be having some so-called canned reports. I mean, it can generate an inventory report of my products in my shelf, for example. So beyond that, there is not much of analytics that's going on. So even the technology stack is kind of different from for a data warehouse database versus a transactional database. What I wanted to talk about is the design of that particular database. So for those who are familiar with database design, the transactional database is generally designed keeping in mind lots of integrity issues and normalization. So these are the kind of different kinds of consideration that goes into the design itself. On the other hand, the data warehouse database is designed based on, for example, dimensional modeling, right? So in dimensional modeling, the nature of the schema, we use the terms called star schema. You don't create star schema in a transactional database, right? You create star schema in the data warehouse database. So the way the database itself is designed is very different, which means in terms of the usage, the technical difference in this design is there because the nature of access in a transactional database, it includes all operations. You add new data, you modify existing data, you delete existing data, and of course you retrieve existing data, right? This we refer to in database parlance as the CRUD operation, create, retrieve, update, delete. In the data warehouse, you generally don't do all of these operations. The focus is primarily only on retrieving. Because it's not transactional in nature, I don't log into a data warehouse database to purchase a product, right? You log into the transactional system, right? So given that, there is a significant difference in the way you approach working with a data warehouse as opposed to working with a transactional database. To summarize, broadly, the transactional systems are referred to as OLTP, online transaction processing systems, and the analytics side of things, they are referred to as online analytical processing systems. So that is one way to remember the difference between a transactional database and a data warehouse.
तो सवाल ये होना चाहिए ताकि what is the difference between a data warehouse and a transactional database? क्या आप कमेंट्स में मुझे एक ऐसी कंपनी का नाम बता सकते हैं जो दोनों ट्रांजैक्शनल डेटाबेस और डेटा वेयरहाउस यूज करती है? और अगली वीडियो में वी विल लर्न हाउ टू डिजाइन योर ओन डेटा वेयरहाउस. तो बने रहिए. एंड इफ यू कांट वेट टू गेट योर डेटा जर्नी स्टार्टेड, देन चेक आउट द लिंक इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन फॉर सम इंडस्ट्री फर्स्ट कोर्सेज.